Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stolyarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon of January 14th, 2024. Today, we are pleased to bring to you this session, which will discuss developments in transhumanism and transhumanist advocacy on the African continent. And joining us today is our distinguished panel, including several U.S. Transhumanist Party officers, our Director of Visual Art, Art Ramon Garcia, our Director of Longevity Outreach, Ben Ballweg, our Director of Citizen and Community Science, and our 2024 U.S. Vice Presidential candidate, Daniel Tweed. Joining us from Belgium is our friend and frequent guest on the Virtual Enlightenment Salons from AFT Techno Prague and Heels, Didier Kernel. And Didier has helped us to assemble this panel of transhumanists from Africa. We have joining us today Josiah Akinloye, who is the founder and CEO of Main Logics Technology Limited in Nigeria. We have Josue Gabo, who is the president of the Société Ivoirienne de Transhumanism, or SIVOT, from Côte d'Ivoire. We have Frederick Onwuka from Nigeria, who is the author of The Great View of the Future, How AI Will Give Us a New Perspective. And we also hope to have several other African transhumanists joining us today. Haman Adama Debuzi, who is a student researcher in the Department of Philosophy and the Faculty of Arts, Letters, and Human Sciences in the University of Yaoundé in Cameroon. And Brenda Ramakapelwa, who is the CEO of TAFTS, the Transdisciplinary Agora for Future Discussions. Brenda has been our guest on multiple virtual enlightenment salons as well. So hopefully they will join us when their internet connections allow. But in the meantime, let us go to Josiah for his opening remarks. Josiah, what would you like to tell us about your outlooks on transhumanism, as well as transhumanism as it exists on the African continent, advocacy efforts toward it, how it has advanced in your experience?
All right, thank you very much, Gennady, for the introduction. Hi, I'm Josiah Akinloye. I am a member of the Enlightenment Transhumanist Nigeria. And talking about transhumanism in Africa and in Nigeria generally, we've been able to organize and sensitize people about latest technology and innovative region around transhumanism technologies like longevity, anti-aging, human enhancement, and the like. So transhumanism in Nigeria and Africa has been growing little by little, but not really as we think. So we are just looking to approach transhumanism in Africa with another dimension, because we notice here in Africa, we like culture and form of entertainment. So part of our plan, we are looking to also approach transhumanism from the aspect of culture and entertainment perspective.
Yes, thank you, Josiah. And I'm curious, how long have you been involved in the transhumanist movement? When did you first learn about transhumanism, and what inspired you to delve into it further?
All right, thank you for that. 2012 or 2013, when I was in school, I had an uncle who just suddenly got blind without any form of pre-notification or anything. So we were like, what could happen? We visited diverse hospitals, seek medical counsels and the like. But unfortunately, based on what I said earlier, that we are Africa and we focus much on our culture and also entertainment. Some people say maybe spiritual attacks and the like. So I went online to start doing some research, and I happened to be quite interested in robotics field. I was of the opinion that we have smart camera, we have embedded chip camera. We can make a camera and find a way we can synchronize this camera to the brain so that people with physical challenges like uh, physical challenges with their eyes, we can use camera and synchronize the pictorial image to their brain. So doing that research, going online, I dedicated about 2 hours of my time per day because, of course, I'm still in school. So I came across transhumanism, which talks about different topics, and the topics ranging from cryogenics, growing of artificial limbs, biotechnology, even immortality. So I was fascinated about the theory and the organization. So I go more deep with the research in the transhumanism field. Each time I do a lot of research, I find something new. So that's what fascinated me about transhumanism. So, and since then, I've been looking for different organizations. I look for different organizations since 2013. I just register. I went on Facebook. I edited my profile to be a transhumanism, and since then I've been connecting with major transhumanist uh, advocates in Nigeria and Africa. And since then, that's how I've been growing in the transhumanism field. And moreover, I've been quite interested in the industrial field because I am not an academia. I don't really want to be in the academic field. So I am so much in the industrial and the entrepreneurial field of transhumanism. So that's what part of what brings this idea of smart home and Internet of Things, connecting devices and controlling things from smartphone remotely and even at ease to give security and safety to user and to advance technology for humanity.
Yes. Thank you very much, Josiah, for that answer. And it is quite interesting that the desire to overcome disabilities is what attracted you to transhumanism in the first place. And after that, you branched out to discover all of the various pursuits and implications of transhumanism. Along these lines, Ben Ballweg has shared this interesting article from ARPA-H, which is the new Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health in the United States. And this article is entitled ARPA-H Launches Research Program to Restore Sight to People Who Are Blind. So these kinds of endeavors are already underway, and that is quite interesting. So thank you, Josiah, for sharing your story. And now we'll open it up to questions for Josiah. Didier, if you have something to ask Josiah, please go ahead.
Well, not really at the moment. I would like to ask maybe after all African participants were speaking, just to say that it's really great to see the work of transhumanists. That's really not easy in Africa, and I know that there will be at the end of the year longevist and transhumanist conference in Lagos in October. Maybe you can say a few more words about that if you are already involved. Yeah, that's my main question for the moment.
All right, thank you. I am a member of the Enlightenment Transhumanism of Nigeria, and we've been looking to organize a conference. In partnership, we are looking to also even partner with staff, people of Osinakachi, because it's of late we just realized Osinakachi is planning to organize a conference in Nigeria. So we are looking to collaborate together. But preceding that, we are hoping to host a virtual conference in transhumanism, especially to sensitize people on transhumanism and also against the upcoming conference that is coming later on this year. And we had a discussion yesterday because we held a meeting in the transhumanism forum for We Africa. So we discussed that part of the approach we can use is through entertainment and culture. If we can have some kind of way to communicate transhumanism to people through entertainment and culture, as you know, Afrobeat is what most people listen to all virtually everywhere in the world. So if we can make transhumanism to be part of our culture, we can communicate to larger people. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Josiah. And now I propose that we hear from Josue Gabo regarding his activities in Côte d'Ivoire. So Josue, welcome. What would you like to say about transhumanism in Côte d'Ivoire, as well as what inspired you to venture into transhumanism?
Thank you. I want to say that we have created our organization in September, and we want to make in the same place all the researchers living in Côte d'Ivoire to open a reflection in the synoptic and transversal analysis of main technological development related to the modification to the human subject. We think that the transhumanism is a conception very difficult for us. In Côte d'Ivoire, we don't speak about transhumanism, so we wanted to try to explain to our to Ivorians that it's very important that you have to know transhumanism, because when we are in the world and somewhere we are speaking about the development of human being and Ivorians are not concerned, it's very difficult for us. So we wanted to explain to all Ivorians the importance of the transhumanism. It's why we have created this organization.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Josue. And now, per Didier's expressed desire to hear introductory statements from all of the African transhumanists who are here, at least at this time, let's hear from Frederick Onwuka, who is in Nigeria. And Frederick has written quite an interesting book, The Great View of the Future, How AI Will Give Us a New Perspective. So, Frederick, if you could comment on what led you to discover transhumanism, as well as your thoughts about the current state of transhumanism in Africa and its potential. Let's see, and I think we need to unmute you. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is basically, I read transhumanism from social media, likewise from my friends, social media friend, Jenna, the Explorer, Estella Roy, and Tom Rose. Through their posts, I see them online on Facebook. So I took interest in that regard to be able to look towards the direction of transhumanism. And what I realized so far in Africa is that transhumanism in Africa has little penetration in Africa as a whole. So we need a lot of awareness campaigns that will make transhumanism more popular amongst Africans. So we need a city-wide, let's say a continental-wide awareness campaign in Africa, so that everyone in Africa could understand what transhumanism entails. And during my discovery, I discovered some disadvantage and some weaknesses, some lapses that makes transhumanism so low, having low penetration in Africa. For example, there's an acronym that I developed or devised. I developed, so to speak. I call this FREAK. FREAK, that is FREAK. Now, what is FREAK? The F stands for funds. In Africa, example, transhumanism in Africa is very poor because there's low funds to bring about the awareness I was talking about. Another one is research. We don't really have research facilities here in Africa that could encourage indigenous persons to take part in transhumanism research and development. Another one is E, which stands for endowment. What are the endowments? Endowments in the sense that endowments in supporting transhumanism research in universities, supporting our institutions. There are brilliant people in African universities that we can use other foreign countries that have advanced in the aspect of transhumanism. We can easily support them because here in Africa there's a low turnout there. So in the regard of endowment, it will go a long way to facilitate the penetration of transhumanism in Africa. So we need endowment here in Africa in supporting transhumanism in African high institutions. The another one is A, which stands for accelerated indigenous innovations. What did I mean by accelerated indigenous innovations? Innovators, sorry. Accelerated indigenous innovators are like locals, indigenous innovators that can really improve the awareness of transhumanism in Africa, doing research. So we need that also. Then the last one is knowledge sharing through transcontinental partnership. There's a bridge, there's a gap between Africa and the advanced world. The way the advanced world see Africa is very poor. So in this regard now, we need a thorough partnership between the advanced world and Africa, so to speak. So we need that collaboration in the aspect of knowledge sharing through continental partnership. Those countries that have really advanced in the aspect of transhumanism need to export their intellectual and intelligence here in Africa so that it will grow the participation of locals, indigenous local people that are interested in transhumanism in Africa. So another one, there are some points here I highlighted here. I highlighted some points here. One of the causes of lack of transhumanism, the spread of transhumanism in Africa, is early enlightenment. To promote awareness through educational programs, workshops, media campaigns to highlight the positive impact of transhumanism in human longevity and well-being. These are one of the criteria that we need approaches to be able to penetrate transhumanism in Africa. Another one is one of the barriers is cultural and religious sensitization. In Africa, here we are traditional. We are traditional more than any other parts of the world. So cultural religious sensitization is very important to foster open dialogues to challenge and reshape rigid cultural norms and religious beliefs that may hinder acceptance. Another one here is that the third point here is vision plan for intellectuals to develop a comprehensive vision plan or roadmap that aligns with societal goals, emphasizing the potential benefits of transhumanism, engage intellectuals and thought leaders in discussion to gather support and promote understanding. This is also something that we are lacking here in Africa and with the rest of the world. There's no vision plan here for transhumanism here in Africa. That's why we have low penetration of the awareness of transhumanism in Africa. The fourth point here is investment and research consortium. Establish both private and public investment research consortium, encouraging collaboration between governments, private sectors, and academic. Pooling funds and resources can accelerate research and development in transhumanist technologies. This is also something that we are lacking here in Africa, which is trying to hinder the penetration of transhumanism in Africa. The fifth point is local research support. Here we lack that local research support in terms of funds initiative within higher education institutions. As I said in my previous introductory comments, rather, encourage indigenous research and educators to incorporate transhumanism into their curriculums, fostering knowledge base that aligns with global advancements. Then, in conclusion, by combining education, cultural sensitivity, strategic planning, financial support, and research initiatives, Africa can actively contribute to the realization of a future that extends human life and improve overall well-being of our burgeoning population. So these are some of the points I highlight towards the coupling the needs of transhumanism here in Africa. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Frederick, for those remarks. And now there's an interesting question that has arisen from several of our viewers, and there have been some comments in the chat about it as well. Daniel Tweed wonders how much of a barrier to progress is having a common language in Africa? Is English fairly widely spoken in most parts of Africa nowadays? And Francois Joanneau writes that, in his view, most Africans understand either French or English. Siba Chamuza, our foreign ambassador in Togo, who also speaks English, French, and German, wonders if the language barrier can find solutions in technology. So I'm curious what our African panelists think about this. Do you think that the majority of Africans would be able to understand either English or French or perhaps even German? And these are languages in which there has been a lot of communication of transhumanist thought. So, Josue, do you have any thoughts on this?
My thought is that
I think that we can write, but we can speak. We cannot speak. Technology can help us to write, to translate what we are speaking about, but to speak, it's very difficult to help us. But I think that technology can help us to write. Translation is very easily made by writing. But I'm not sure technology will help us to speak very easily the different languages.
Well, I think, Josue, you are quite articulate. Your command of English is very good. So you are one of the people in Africa who can definitely promote these ideas effectively. And Frederick, you were making some remarks on this as well. So please go ahead.
I think, as we said earlier, as Webo said earlier, we need technology that can suit local language, that can break the local language barrier. Because in Africa, we have the Francophone speaking Africans and the Anglophone speaking Africa. So there's a cultural barrier already. This is creating that barrier whereby the penetration of transhumanism in Africa is not really high. It's not really on the high side. So if we can, if there's a technology that could break that barrier, then I think transhumanism in Africa will go smooth and fair. So that is my remark for now. And some supports from foreign aids, like supporting high institutions in Africa to carry out research based on transhumanism, because it's very low over here. So that's why we are lacking it. That's why we are lacking the penetration of transhumanism in Africa. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Frederick. And Josiah, do you have any thoughts on the language question?
Yes, I have some things to talk about. On the language, in Nigeria, English is our common language outside our mother's language. Like the part I am from, Yoruba is my mother's tongue, and that's the first language I speak since the day I was born. So, but people outside transhumanism, people have been trying to. I happen to have a friend on LinkedIn who teaches data science in our mother tongue. I guess as transhumanists, we can also interpret the core objective, what transhumanism is all about, to people in our local dialect. That's how we can bridge the gap.
Yes, thank you, Josiah. And we also have an interesting set of comments from our foreign ambassador in Togo, Siba Chamuza. I will bring those comments up as I think they will add to the discussion. Siba writes, I admire the initiatives that are emerging to promote transhumanism in Africa, and I hope for the ambitious commitment of local structures and donors to support technological awakening. Very well put. But Siba also writes, even in the West, the word transhumanism is still very little known. And that has been my observation as well. When I speak to the general public in Western countries about transhumanism, the number one reaction is not fear or aversion, it's simple unawareness. Most people don't know what that term means. And on the one hand, that offers us an opportunity, because if we are the first point of contact in terms of the ideas of transhumanism for such people, then we can convey an accurate impression of what it means. On the other hand, it also means we have a large, considerably sizable task ahead of us in terms of getting these ideas across, in terms of cultivating this awareness. And I think this will be a subject of continued discussion that we should explore in this salon as well. I would also like to welcome in our chat our friend Osanakachi Akuma-Kalu from Tufts, the Transdisciplinary Agora for Future Discussions, as well as Afro Longevity. So welcome, Osanakachi. We would be happy to have your insights in the chat as well. So Didier, now that we've heard those presenters who have been able to join our stream thus far, what are your questions or comments?
Well, maybe the first comment, since we are speaking about languages in Africa, is for I think the majority, but certainly a big part of African people, French or English is only the second or even sometimes the third language. So it is an enrichment to see people speaking many different languages. For example, in South Africa, there are, I forgot now, 11 or 12 official languages. And Brenda, who is sadly not here, told me that she spoke, I forgot, but 4 or 5 languages. So this is one quite first important remark, that we can have more exchange, more enrichment in many African countries than in other countries where people speak only or mostly one language. Yeah, that's the first comment. The second comment is, I think we didn't speak about this yet, but probably the biggest difference, one of the big differences concerning the perception of technological progress in Africa and in other countries, let's say in the South, even if it's not always in the South, but again, in the South, and countries in the North, is that the general perception of technological progress is more positive in the South than in the North. And it's always, in some aspects, kind of difficult to understand, because in the North we benefit more of technological progress, because we have the chance to have a higher level of goods, let's say. So what do you think? Why is it that the general perspective about progress is better in Africa? Is it because people are younger? Is it because there is more potential progress that you can hope? I don't know. I sometimes I really don't know, and I'm curious about your answers for this.
Yes, so this is a good question, and I think right now we have Josiah and Frederick on. So I'm curious what your thoughts are with regard to Didier's inquiry. Why does it seem that technological progress is actually better viewed in the global South as compared to the global North, and in Africa, for instance, as compared to Europe or the United States? Any hypotheses in that regard?
All right. So I will say we are still coming up in Africa, because most of the technology advancements in the Western world has gone really far. We are just coming up. And as you know, the part of the Africa I came from, which is Nigeria, there are still a lot of people who are still not that really educated about all this technology. So majorly part of our challenges here in Africa, education is a part of it, which will contribute to the advancement in technology.
Yes, thank you, Josiah. And any thoughts from Frederick or Josue on Didier's observation that it seems that technological progress is better received in Africa than it is right now in Europe or the United States? Yes, so any comments on that observation? Do you think it's true, or do you think it depends on whom one is speaking to?
No comment. No comment now.
No comment. Okay, Frederick, any thoughts on this? Let's see. I think he disconnected, unfortunately, but Frederick did share something in the comments, an acronym where F stands for funds, R stands for research and deployment, E stands for endowments, A stands for accelerated indigenous innovations, and K stands for knowledge sharing through transcontinental partnerships. So the acronym does read FREAK, but it's really, I think, a combination of prerequisites that Frederick considers to be important to foster the spread of transhumanism and technology in Africa. So thank you, Frederick, for sharing that. Now, my own thinking on technological progress and how it is perceived is that in Africa right now, the benefits of technological progress are so obvious and palpable. And Africans can see if they get cell phones, if they get clean drinking water, if they get higher quality roads, if they get buildings that are created through modern construction techniques, that constitutes an immense improvement to their quality of life. Africans have seen life expectancy increase tremendously over the past several decades. And as a result, Africans see the life-saving, life-extending benefits of technology to a greater extent than Westerners who are steeped in technology, but who have not been able to optimally advance technological progress past the current stage, because we have so many institutional problems in the Western world, certainly in the United States and in countries of the European Union. And as a result, we failed to further push forward the progress of technology to the point where we would visibly see improvements in our day-to-day standards of living. Instead, in the Western world, we face continual increases in the cost of living. We face continual scarcity of basic goods. We see our infrastructure breaking down very often. So while in Africa, the living standards may be starting from a lower point, but Africans have seen the effects of technology very clearly. We have seen kind of the opposite, a long stagnation that has lasted since, I would say, the early 1970s in many areas of life, other than computers and the internet and electronic communications and AI, artificial intelligence. Those have been the exceptions. But that's my hypothesis as to the difference that Didier observes. So now we have some other observations that I think would be good to bring in. Carlos Nato writes that usually religions tend to clash with a future-oriented focus, in his view, and Latin America suffers significantly from this problem. He wonders if religion is a problem for focusing on the future of technology in Africa as well. And our viewer Transhuman Ape wonders about the natural fallacies of religion and popular ideologies. Would you say those stand in the way of transhumanism, or could they be compatible with transhumanism in Africa? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, okay, religion and technology in Africa, or transhumanism in Africa, they have been a kind of conspiracy, especially between the religious leader and the technology world. There have been some religious sects who sometimes ago, they don't even want their followers, their church members, to even watch TV, take for instance. But when they started seeing the benefits as against the disadvantages they are preaching against, they started buying into the idea. Well, a couple of weeks ago, a popularly known pastor came out and apologized to his followers, saying he's sorry about not allowing his followers to use television sets. That was back about 20-something or 30-something years ago. So sometimes religion is also a barrier to advancement in technology in Africa, and also transhumanism as a whole. So because we, Africa, like I said earlier, we believe so much in our culture, and our culture also is also mixed with our religion. So it's of late that people started having this thought and change of mind due to the Internet of Things and having a direct access to the outside world. So that's basically what I can say about that.
Yes, thank you, Josiah. And it is quite startling that some religious leaders in Africa were even discouraging their followers from watching television, utilizing much older technologies. But it seems that at least some of them are coming around to recognizing that that may be futile or undesirable. Interestingly enough, one of our friends within the transhumanist community is Dr. Charles Awuzie, who is a former pastor, but he became a transhumanist and an atheist, and he has since used a lot of the same persuasive techniques, but oriented toward advancing transhumanism rather than disparaging it. So there is hope that these ideas could gain traction, and maybe even some of the religious leaders could be persuaded to give transhumanism a chance. Any other thoughts from our African guests about religion and transhumanism and the impact of religion on the spread of transhumanism in Africa? Either Frederick or Josue, would you like to say something? Let's see.
To me, traditional African are not against transhumanists, but Christians in Africa used to perceive the transhumanist or philosophy in general like a Satanist thing. I used to hear that transhumanist is a way to take the place of God. Man want to take the place of God. I used to hear some sort of words sometimes. So in traditional Africa, I don't think that people are against transhumanists, but with the new perception of religion, Christian religion, I think that Africans can be against transhumanism. It's perceived like a Satanist thing. Take the place of God. That sort of thing I used to hear here in Côte d'Ivoire.
Yes. Thank you, Josue. And that is a very interesting observation. So the traditional religions are not really hostile to transhumanism, but various, let's say, fundamentalist strains of Christianity in Africa can associate it with Satanism or trying to take the place of God. And Daniel Tweed wonders in our chat whether there are Satanists, transhumanists. There was one article in the Immortalist magazine in 2020, I believe, by B.J. Murphy, who identified as a Satanist transhumanist. But Satanism, as he described it, is a very specific interpretation in the United States, and it's mostly just secularism with a bit of irreverence. So it's not that they literally worship Satan, it's that they want to kind of poke holes in the Christian religion and say, well, this character of Satan, he's not really that bad, but really they're just secularists. And honestly, if one were to examine their views, they wouldn't be that far from atheists. So that's probably not the kind of Satanism that the Christian pastors whom Josue was talking about are afraid of. And Ben Balweg asks Josue, it would seem that people in Côte d'Ivoire are more familiar with transhumanism than I would have expected. Or is it only after you explain transhumanism to them that people feel such things about it? So I think the question is, before you have a chance to speak with them, do they have any sort of knowledge of transhumanism? Or is there impression based on what you tell them. Any thoughts on this? And we can come back to that as well. But Didier, it looks like you would like to offer some comments.
Yeah, two comments. Maybe first, if Armand was here, he would speak about one of his main goals. So Armand Kachetka from Cameroon, who recently organized a conference about longevity. So he considers that one of his goals is to make the link between transhumanist ideas and ideas related to traditions in Africa, especially in Cameroon. And this is very interesting. I will not speak for him because he knows better than I know, but he said that there are some common aspects. That's the first thing I wanted to say. And the second thing is, we have to be careful when we use some words about related to transhumanism, because even when we say that for kind of a joke, people can perceive this as this is really the case, and it's not the case. So let's a reminder for most transhumanists, even or almost all transhumanists, the number one goal is to make it possible for people to live longer and much longer and much healthier lives, and to improve ourselves in enhancing ourselves, but not against the others, to work with others, to work together, and to be more also, let's say, more humans. We have to, and when people are saying, speaking about other things, very often it's kind of a joke. And we have to be careful to remind what are the main goals of most transhumanists. That's it.
Yes. Thank you, Didier. And we do have a response from Josue to our question from Ben. And Josue writes, in general, people equate all freedom of thought and innovation with transgression. So when you explain the aims of transhumanism to them, they say, here's another transgression, hence diabolism, or the association with Satan. And that is interesting that there are, it seems, many people in Africa who are so in the grip of this fundamentalist Christianity that any significant innovation seems transgressive to them. And on the one hand, innovation is transgressive against established dogma. On the other hand, innovation aims to improve human life and reduce suffering and reduce mortality. And those should be obviously good goals. And there are various interpretations of religions, including the Christian religion, which say it is a moral imperative to alleviate suffering. It is a moral imperative to heal the sick or give sight to the blind, which is exactly what transhumanist technologies are aimed at doing. So perhaps there is a way to speak about this that could diminish some of those connotations of something diabolical and rather focus on the common goals that we have with adherents of various religions. And we also have some interesting comments from our friend Osanakachi Akuma Kalu, and he kind of challenges the unitary outlook on Africa. He writes that at first, Africa shouldn't be addressed as an entity. Africans are divided among tribal lines. All foreign languages are seen as imperialistic, and this affects learning because of the power of language. And he also writes that invention and innovation are not on the framework of Afrocentric language and meaning. So he raises some challenges that I think are important to address, because there is this suspicion among certain populations that even by speaking Western languages, one is somehow introducing these elements of imperialism. And Transhuman Ape also wrote a similar comment. He writes, Africans here don't trust transhumanism because they think it's a Trojan horse for hateful race science. And for us transhumanists, that may seem like an absurd kind of misconception. But of course, many Africans have had to deal with essentially actual colonial occupation. And how do we convince the populations of various African countries or members of various tribal groups that transhumanism is not about that? We don't seek to colonize anybody. We just seek to bring the benefits of technological progress to Africans and have Africans participate in the transhumanist movement so that they could also benefit themselves and their fellow countrymen and improve the standards of living. And we also hope that Africans can show some possibilities to the rest of the world, because it does seem like the global West and the global East, especially as epitomized by the United States and Russia, have come to an impasse, a kind of civilizational dead end, unfortunately, as exemplified by this war in Ukraine and what for now almost 2 years has been a significant risk of a nuclear war. So clearly there's something about the perspectives of those great powers which is lacking, which is not compatible with the future progress of humankind. And we actually hope that Africans can help provide different perspectives so that we can leave this impasse, so that we can enable the further progress of human civilization. So how can we break free of any associations of transhumanism with Western colonialism or imperialism? Is there a way to distance transhumanism from that? Or is it just a matter of time? Would it take a few decades or a few generations before that association is broken? What do you think of that?
All right, let me say something. To me, I believe for us to be able to make people understand transhumanism, especially in Africa, we should be able to form a kind of synergy between the common practice of Africa, talking about our culture. I will want to give an example. In our tribe, we have this kind of app people make for themselves, which can be used for assimilation when you are reading. So it's a kind of app prepared by all these traditional herbal doctors. So if we can find a kind of synergy between that to make it to look like a nootropic and explain to people that this is what transhumanism is all about, I guess we can win a whole lot of people's hearts with that approach.
Yes, thank you, Josiah. And we have several comments in our internal chat as well. Frederick writes that Africans are deeply influenced by traditional values which drive their religion in essence. And Josue writes, to convince my compatriots, I tell them that with transhumanism, we're no longer behind the times, because this is a new discipline for everyone, for Westerners and Africans alike. There is no imperialism. We just need to focus on research, and research is universal. Yes, I really like those comments. I think the appeal to universal human values and the fact that transhumanism can benefit everybody in any country, on any continent, no matter what the history of that place has been. I think that's very important to emphasize, and that will help people throughout Africa. So now we have joining us Brenda Ramakapelwa. She is the CEO of TAFTS, the Transdisciplinary Agora for Future Discussions, as well as one of the founders of Afro Longevity. So welcome, Brenda. We are quite pleased to have you here. And if you could provide us your comments about the state of transhumanism in Africa and the progress and advocacy efforts that have occurred throughout the past several years.
Thank you so much, and good evening to everybody. So from where I'm sitting, I am based in South Africa. So just a glance at the continent, I think transhumanism is still very new as a concept in the continent. There's a lot of interest in what technology can do and how they can be used to augment with humans in terms of biology. Because of the young population that we have in the continent, there's a lot of interest in what technology can do. There's a lot of interest in what science, when combined with technology from an innovative point of view, can bring or help us in advancing the African population. But at the same time, this is met with a lot of skepticism in terms of what does this mean to us as natural beings? What does this mean to us from a religious point of view, cultural point of view, and all of that? So I think as much as people are excited about what it can bring, there's still a lot of misunderstanding of what transhumanism is and the need for education across the continent. And I'm talking about Africa as a whole, but I think one thing that becomes an issue in Africa is that we tend to look at Africa as just one thing, when Africa is so diverse and a continent with totally different cultures. So therefore, the reception of anything that is new will differ depending on where you are. People in the southern region of Africa might look at things quite differently from the people that are in the northern or western region of Africa. So I think we for us to really get a sense of how this is being received or will advance in the continent, we need to, look at, the continent as a whole, but we also need to delve into each country and look at, how people are advancing from that point of view.
Yes, thank you very much, Brenda, for those remarks. And we do have some feedback from our commentators. Siba Chamuza writes, I prefer out of caution not to generalize because everyone in their individuality thinks differently within beliefs. As in belief systems, there are also debates. So that echoes Brenda's comments as well as Osinakachi's comments earlier. And Edward Hudgens writes that the index of economic freedom shows the variability that Osunakachi mentions, but the index also shows some African countries of poor scores on the rule of law, property rights protections, and independent judiciaries. And following up on the earlier discussion, Mike Lazine writes that it is like the United Federation of Planets in the Star Trek universe being benevolent, but yet in the Star Trek universe, there are also alien species that look at the Federation as being characterized by malevolence or deceit. So it's often the case that even if you have benevolent intentions, some people will be suspicious, and some people will wonder, well, is this really a guise for something else? And it's important to overcome that, and not just through our words, but through our example, through what we actually try to do, what we try to cultivate, and what we would like to also see people in various parts of Africa accomplish by themselves, because we want African transhumanists to be leaders within the transhumanist community and within the world stage. We think that it doesn't just go one way. That is, that the innovators in Africa will have a lot to teach us in the Western world, especially as time progresses, as, of course, the dynamism of the African continent manifests itself. As you mentioned, Brenda, there are a lot of young people on the African continent, and as they hopefully will learn more about science and technology, as they interact more with other countries in the world, they will contribute in terms of their capabilities for innovation. I think demographically, that's also very likely to happen, because the average age in Western countries is increasing. There are some Western countries where the average age now is above 40. And the birth rates in Western countries are falling as well. So if we want to maintain the same kind of dynamism and productivity, we need to tackle this in multiple ways. We need to, first of all, extend lifespans and youthful lifespans here. We need to rely more on automation in order to undertake more of that productive work. But another significant tactic that we need to employ is immigration. So we need to also have more Africans moving to Western countries and contributing to the economies there. Otherwise, we're going to see some severe demographic problems in the coming decades. Frederick also writes, we need to break the backstage ideologies, as he calls them. That is, L standing for language barriers, I standing for information deficiency, M standing for mob thinking, I standing for impressions, and T standing for thought patterns. And that acronym is limit. So we need to break free of those limits. And Daniel Tweed writes, African diversity is a strength. So a lot of very good comments were made here. And I would like to focus on this theme of African diversity. What do you think are the most promising places in Africa where transhumanism could thrive? Those could be the most technologically advanced places, the places that are perhaps most culturally tolerant and would be receptive of transhumanist ideas. Are there cities, countries, geographical regions where you think transhumanism could make the most progress in the near future? I would open this up to any of our guests from Africa. Any thoughts on this question? And we can come back to this as well. But Josiah, if you have some thoughts on what are some
of
the...
I think Nigeria is a country where I think transhumanism can really thrive very fast, because the adoption rate of technology nowadays is going exponentially top. And if we can find, like I said earlier, a synergy between those technology and transhumanism, a lot of people are going to adopt the idea.
Yes, thank you, Josiah. So Nigeria is a promising location for the advancement of transhumanism. And indeed, we've seen a lot of transhumanists come from Nigeria. So we've had many of them as guests on our salons. Osinakachi Akumakalu is an example. Frederick is an example. Also, we had Ugochukwu, and we had Ugochukwu Alo as well as guests on our past salon. So, Frederick, perhaps you would like to share some of your thoughts about where some of the most promising places in Africa are for the advancement of transhumanism.
Before I go further, I would like to share an idea. You said something about automation, so we can really translate automation into ideomation. Ideomation in the sense that we use ideology. We need to fast-track ideology that could spread transhumanism in Africa. So instead of only relying on automation, we can also build on ideomation to be able to spread the awareness of transhumanism in Africa. Nigeria, as my other colleagues said, is a good place to start because Nigeria has the population and Nigeria also has the individuals that can accelerate the penetration of transhumanism across Africa. Other African continents, we have South Africa, we have Kenya, etc. That will make this possible. Penetration and
All right, thank you, Frederick. So Frederick has coined this term ideomation, and he wants to transition automation into ideomation. So a kind of process for the generation of ideas using advanced technology. Daniel Tweed writes, the African continent deserves to be more widely recognized as the motherland of both human evolution and human civilization. Well, yes, we did all evolve from ancestors who originated on the African continent. So that is correct. Anybody else in regard to the question of where the most promising places in Africa are for the development of transhumanism? I wonder, Brenda, if you could speak about South Africa and the climate of public opinion there, because South Africa is one of the most technologically advanced and economically developed countries in Africa. But how is transhumanism perceived there? Any thoughts on that? I think we may have some.
Yeah. I have the impression that there is some delay. I know sometimes it happens that
Yes, there's some lag in Brenda's connection. All right. Well, Ben, you had a question that dovetailed off of some of what has been said. So please go ahead.
I did wonder, location-wise, if there were different ways of advocating transhumanism to urban and rural areas. I guess I'm speculating that in rural areas like education and electricity, medical care might just not be as accessible as in urban areas. And so to talk about the benefits of technological progress, there might be a different sell than it would be in urban areas where those things are more readily available.
Yes, interesting question, Ben. So any comments on differences between urban and rural areas in terms of promotion of transhumanism or accessibility of transhumanist ideas? Frederick? Any thoughts on this?
In Africa, there's a segmentation. The way people see it in Africa is those people living in the urban area are those people that are well-to-do, while those people living in rural area are those people that are not well-to-do in terms of their income. So we use income to measure those people that are well-to-do living in the urban area and those people living in the rural area, those people that are living, maybe they are peasant farmers, something like that. In the urban city, that is where the hustling and bustling takes place. So we can easily, the most important thing is for we to penetrate those hinterlands, those places that transhumanism has not touched, the locals, those people living in the primitive part of Africa. But Africa is developed because the way people paint Africa, like maybe people are living in the jungle, something like that. But if we can penetrate those places, there are talents there that we can harness, that we can harvest, whereby they can easily project and make transhumanism go viral within Africa. So that is it for me.
Yes, those are very good points, Frederick. And there is a lot of untapped talent in the rural parts of Africa because essentially a lot of our technologies have not fully penetrated there yet. But if people are provided with some exposure to the ideas of transhumanism, perhaps they would be receptive, as it could so obviously help with their standards of living. Now, Brenda, you are back, and the question was for you in terms of South Africa and how receptive people in South Africa have been to transhumanism in your view, as well as what is the potential for South Africa to become a hub of transhumanist activity in the future?
Okay. So I really think that as far as, I'm not going to say transhumanism at this point, as far as science and technology reception, in South Africa, that is one of the top things that, young people here, even older people, are really excited about and wanting to see what technology is bringing and how do we combine the two to ensure that it benefits us as a community. So I therefore think that because of that excitement about invention and innovation, South Africa can be one of those areas that really, take transhumanism from where it's at in Africa to the next level. The one thing that I've always found that becomes a bit of a challenge in South Africa, in some parts of the African continent, in other countries here, is that we tend to come up with things and expect people to just adopt them. And in most cases, they don't work for them. So the one thing, and that is why I'm always talking about education and creating awareness as far as these new concepts or these new ideas coming into the continent or into the different countries, is that we don't stop and think, where is the maturity level as far as, for example, technology is concerned in that particular country? If I come up with an idea like this or an invention or an innovation like this, will it work for those people in that country? Will they understand it the way it is meant to be understood? What is it that I need to do to ensure that they get what I'm trying to communicate? So I think we need to, for us to be able to really, I don't want to use the word sell, but I don't know what I'm running out of, I don't know what the other word is, but to sell the idea to them, to get the buy-in that we want, is to ensure that people understand what transhumanism is in their language, as in, why is it important to me? What is it going to do for me? How do I use it to advance myself? How is this going to benefit me? And most importantly, my community, because remember, in Africa, Ubuntu remains one of the core principles. How does this benefit me and my community? So once people understand that and understand the use of this, understand what it means for them and their communities, it becomes easier to then say, for them to then say, okay, now what is it? Wanting to understand it more, being able to embrace it, understanding its dangers, and also understanding its opportunities so that they know what to pursue and what to avoid. So South Africa, I think, it's already there. There's a lot of technological innovations that are happening here. There's a lot of invention and innovation that is happening in the country, excitement about what's coming down the line. But I think South Africa, just like any other African country or any other country in the world, wants to advance, and transhumanism might be that opportunity to do that, might open that door that people are seeking, for people to start understanding exactly, what is coming down the line and how to best use it to advance it. So I think for me is to be able to tap into what people see as their challenges and understand from them what are the things that they are looking for to be able to solve those challenges, not just push things down their throat, but work with them to understand and not assume we know what the problems is, and use these technologies to help them solve their own problems, get them involved. And that's the only way I think we can get the buy-in. And with that, I think we can get the buy-in anyway, regardless of where they are from the in terms of technological maturity levels or educational maturity levels. That just means that, instead of doing it at this level, we will do it at that level. But I think it can be easily bought into, it can easily be adopted and embraced.
Yes. Thank you very much, Brenda. And yes, it is indeed important to recognize essentially the needs of people in various communities and the nuances of that. That's why it is important, ideally, to have transhumanists on the ground in as many countries and as many cities as possible, people who are of those communities, but who find some affinity to the ideas of transhumanism, and then they see what those needs are, and they see how to frame the broader transhumanist concepts in a way that could get people to recognize, oh, these ideas actually have applications whereby they could solve the particular problems that are most pressing and of greatest concern to people. So definitely very important to consider. And Carlos Nato agrees. He says, great comment, Brenda. I think a good approach is, it is good because you are not supposed to die or age. You can have a choice. And this is indeed an area where I think all of humankind has a common problem, and that is aging, the decay of the body, the increased susceptibility to disease that currently accompanies advanced age, but hopefully it will not have to in the future. We also have an interesting comment by Josue Gabo. He writes, in my view, transhumanism is a major opportunity because by multiplying human capabilities tenfold, we can develop these products. But underdevelopment is precisely the opposite of augmentation. Technological backwardness has only one remedy, human augmentation. And Josue writes further that while it may seem to concern only advanced nations, the Transhumanist Project is well and truly at work in Africa. But in an increasingly secular society, who sets the rules for evolution and normality? African societies need to redefine their vision of man, but even more so, they need to question man's relationship to the demands of transhumanism. Such a reflexive effort must be at one with a political and civic approach, urging Africa's state powers to make contact with the promoters of transhumanist science. In this way, national decision makers would reserve for themselves an essential place in the overall policies designed to lead to the increase in capacities. Transhumanism is only likely to be successful in terms of living together if the state takes care to organize in one way or another national solidarity in this area in terms of both rights and duties. And Frederick writes that we need to first build on ideomation firsthand, followed by adoption, automation, and augmentation. So this concept of ideomation is a prerequisite to the others in Frederick's view. Josiah suggests that we can use the approach of creating transhuman clubs in different universities. And indeed, I would encourage everyone to go to our Transhuman Club website at transhuman.club and see what ideas could be adopted from there and adapted to particular educational institutions in Africa. Also, anybody is welcome to create an account on transhuman.club and start adding content, including content that would be relevant to transhumanism in Africa. So thank you for all of those comments. And now I would invite Art Ramon to ask a question of our guests.
I think several years ago, we had a guest from Nigeria, Calvin Dafiagor, and he's an instructor there in Nigeria. And I asked him a question, and what he answered just kind of shocked me. I asked him, has he seen Black Panther? And he told me no. And I just kind of found that shocking that, he's teaching, science-based courses there at his school, but he hasn't even seen Black Panther. And, that's kind of along Western Afrofuturism. Now, we have that here in the West. I mean, Michael Jackson and Janet Jackson used to always, sing like if they just stepped out of a starship. And I think probably what you need to do to promote transhumanism after is get your own style of Afrofuturism, because Afrofuturism is, based here in America. It's created by Americans. So there in Africa, you should start to promote the arts, have singers, artists, and so forth, and have sort of that marketing side of transhumanism through advertisement and arts and the media, and sort of create your own version of Afrofuturism, African futurism. So I think that's what's missing, because if you just throw out, transhumanism, it's still, it's here in the States, it's hard, to get that message across. So you need something a little easier for people to grab onto, and that's going to be science fiction. So, promote and create some sort of African, futurism with the arts, I think is what's needed. So, has anyone there in your respective countries seen any sort of, arts that comes close to being like Afrofuturism?
Interesting question. Any thoughts from our guests from Africa about Afrofuturism, and how common is it as a genre in African countries that you're familiar with? Do a lot of people whom watch or read science fiction or futurist fiction? Any comments on that? Well, while you're thinking about this, Frederick has an explanation about some of the terms that he used. So he says ideomation equals information creation, adoption equals wide acceptance, automation equals advanced machination, and augmentation equals sophistication. So that's the sequence of events that Frederick considers to be necessary. And now we also have some comments from our YouTube audience. Edward Hudgens writes that per Ben's question, in rural areas, most people are just concerned with the basics. He also writes many healthcare workers and physicians in the US are Nigerians. Edward has encountered many even in the past week. Nigeria has talent, but he has talked to them about why they come to the US rather than staying in Nigeria. So there may be some difficulties in Nigeria that they are trying to escape, essentially, by coming to the US, and that's quite understandable. Now, Sergei Gubkin writes that popularizing transhumanism in Africa is important, as he believes Asia and Africa are our great hope because there's not as much intellectual opposition to transhumanism in Africa, Asia, and Latin America as there is in the West. Well, it seems that the accounts that we've heard differ a bit. There are still the people who think that transhumanism is somehow associated with Satanism. So there are fundamentalist religious opponents, even in various African countries. And as Carlos Neto pointed out, in Latin America, there are fundamentalist religious opponents to transhumanism as well. It seems in all parts of the world we have our challenges, but they're different challenges. So Sergei writes, for instance, even Russian intellectuals are more positive about transhumanism, as in the West, aging and especially death acceptance discourse was just too strong in the Western intellectual tradition. And I agree, based on my personal impressions in the former Soviet Union, there isn't as much ideological opposition to transhumanism or life extension. A lot of people would just say, life is so bad right now and there are so many immediate problems that it's impractical, but they don't say that it's undesirable. By the way, Sergei wrote that the death acceptance discourse was very strong in the Western tradition during de-Christianization. And it's interesting. Yes, in the West, sometimes we even encounter atheists who will say, well, we should just accept death as part of the natural way of things. They sometimes say we should accept it for ecological reasons, or because we are all stardust and it's not anything bad that we die. Or some will say, well, we were lucky to even have been born, so why complain about dying? And I don't agree with any of those arguments, even though I am an atheist myself. But thank you for those remarks. Now let us go to Daniel for a further question from him.
Yes, I'm happy to see our friends from the mother continent here. You know, Africa does have, I believe, the most amount of equatorial landmass, and hence the most solar influx, because that's highest at the equator. But I also think it's a great opportunity for seasteading kinds of arrangements. It's got huge coastline, and of course on the equator is the most hospitable place to put floating habitats, or even anchored ones. So and there's a huge labor pool. You know, the sea is really our stepping stone to our space future, as I would advocate. And so I also think that, you know, the idea of Pan-Africanism was proposed by many scholars and activists, but I would propose that a pan-tribalist confederation would be the good manifestation of that. Federalism is the idea that we're all under a unified control system, but if you look at the root of the word fidares, confederates means faith in each other. And if you have tribes that are aggregating, you know, with a faith in each other kind of thing, rather than faith in some hierarchical control god or, you know, giant control government. Of course, the word, you know, confederation has a bad word, a bad taste, because we had the Civil War with a confederacy. But I mean, really, confederation is actually a great way to do pan-tribal Africanism. So, and I think tribalism is not a bad thing if it makes people more self-governing and more familiar with their neighbors. So maybe some response to some of those ideas. Anyone?
Let's see. Any responses to Daniel's questions about the prospects for some sort of Pan-Africanism based on tribal connections, or seasteading, for instance, as a way to pursue transhumanism, maybe in coastal areas of Africa? Any thoughts on either of those? Brenda, please go ahead.
Yeah. Before I respond to this question, I wanted to respond to the previous one, if I may. The question around Afrofuturism and the view on Black Panther and all of that. So I wanted to just say that, Black Panther was good for most of the people that I know of, at least in South Africa. I know it was well received. There was excitement about the whole Wakanda thing. I think the only issue that might be there, or at least from the few people that I spoke to in the reviews of this thing, was about sometimes how Africa is depicted, because it is not, most of these projects are not done by Africans, as you said. With Black Panther, there was a lot of South Africans in the movie, but it was not really a true reflection of what Africa is about. I know it's what we would want it to be, it being a superpower and all of that. So I think, it is right that, we need to start doing things and, kind of positioning them or showing them the way we see the future Africa to be. And one of the most difficult things that we face with is the lack of infrastructure to do that, the lack of funding to do that, the lack of resources, because there's a lot of brain drain in Africa. Most of our people will be as brilliant as they are, as talented as they are, but because there are no opportunities in Africa, they will move and probably, go to the US or go to Europe to pursue those opportunities. There is a need for us to bring their talent back to Africa. There is a need for us to develop ourselves in Africa and really put some of their talent on the table for the people to see. But also, I think a call for our global collaborators to also, listen more to what Africa has to say and pay attention to what the real Africa is by listening to the people that are here, taking into consideration their lived experiences, not just consuming what the media is putting out there. So I think collaboration in this case means we all listen to each other. We all take into consideration the needs, the wants of what Africa sees as its future. That is the only way I see us seeing Africa for what it is, not what we think it is or what we've been told it is. So there's a lot of consumption of sci-fi and wanting to put that. I know a lot of people that have put some of those projects together, but because they do not have the funds to put them at the level of your Hollywood type movies, it becomes very difficult for the world to see those. So, but I think there's a lot of appetite to do more of those, and I see that coming up in the future. The next question around Pan-Africanism, I think also there's a lot of appetite for that, and I think it's a great idea for us to start looking at research around what's available in our coastal area and a bit more study on that. There hasn't been enough of that. And I think it will be such a, I think it's a brilliant idea to start looking at what that has to offer and what can that mean for us, even to the globe, in terms of research and what we might find if we start pursuing such opportunities.
Yes, thank you very much, Brenda, for both of your answers on the subjects of science fiction as well as Pan-Africanism. And Francois Joanneau also contributed on the seasteading question. He writes, seasteading is the way to save natural spaces. Seasteading will bring opportunities to African shores. There is no need to seek opportunities in industrialized countries. We can bring industry close to Africa. So thank you for those thoughts, Francois. And now let's go to Didier.
Yeah, I would like to come back to a few things, but first to say that I totally agree with what Brenda said about, let's say, what's sometimes called brain drain. So it is great for Europe and for the US to benefit from high-level people coming from Africa, but it can be a big problem for Africans themselves and for, let's say, progress in Africa. And yes, seasteading, it could be an idea, but for me, one of the big problems at the moment is still technological one. The fact that, and we see that here, but not only here, that internet access is now a reality in most in all African countries, but very fast internet access is not a reality yet. So progress for this, I think, is very, very important. I am curious if African transhumanists here think the same. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing is concerning this, let's say, link between African culture and transhumanism. I asked Armand Gerchetka, sorry, I cannot pronounce it, told me, and he gave me the information that it's about, among other things, the epic of the African Mvet. This is an imaginary Central African tale of human perfection through a mystical transmutation of metal and flesh, giving the warriors of the Ngong people not only invulnerability but also physical immortality. So there are tales in Africa about immortality, about transhumanism, even if it is not with this name. And then the last thing that I wanted to say, it's about what Brenda and Osina told us, and I of course agree that Africa is not one unity, but there are some common aspects, like Europe is not a unity, but there are some common aspects, And concerning Europe and Africa compared to North America, one big difference is the diversity of languages. It's, I think, I don't know exactly, but I think, I think diversity of languages is higher in Africa, but diversity of languages in Europe is very high as well. So like in my country, we have already three official languages, and most people speak English as well. So French, Dutch, and German are the three official languages. And even in a city like my city, Brussels, very multicultural city, there are big differences between the western part who is poor, where I live, and the eastern part rich. Not the same way to speak even. Okay, that's what I wanted to say. And maybe the last thing, I was interested by what you say about Afro-futurism, especially you, Brenda. But I would like to know if you speak about Afro-futurism to people in South Africa, let's say, and in Nigeria, because we have people from Nigeria and from South Africa and from Ivory Coast. Is it a word that people, let's say, know about it, or it's kind of people don't know about it? Thank you.
Yes.
So maybe in response to Didier, yes, in South Africa, so I can speak about South Africa because I'm here. So this is the world that people know about. They are very much interested in that. They really wanna start thinking about what would Africa look like in the future, but also they imagined Africa. There's a lot of young people. I mean, even in the arts and creative arts, their music, their dances, their plays, you see elements of science fiction coming in. A lot of the short films that they do, as I said, from a arts and culture point of view, because we were talking specifically about Black Panther and such movies, there is thinking and there is action around that. So you can see that people, are starting to imagine what a future Africa will start to be. And I think in a lot of African countries, the thing is, I'm not in a position to say this is what Nigeria would think or this is what Kenya would say. Only the people that are in those countries will say. But obviously, because there is social media and all of that, there are conversations that are happening with young people from all of these different countries. And you can see people are really forward thinkers. And it's not only about what I think it can be, but how real is it? What can I start doing now? When you look at some of the projects that some of these kids are doing in academic institutions, you can see that they are future driven and technologically driven. So, as I said, most of these things is about finding a way of or an opportunity to ensure that they are showcased for the world to see. And also, when that happens, when they get that exposure, that the people outside of Africa, can put trust in what Africa presents, can buy into it the same way that when I get something from Europe or from the US, I get excited about. One of the things over and above brain drain that we're struggling with is it's almost like if something comes from Africa, it has to be questioned a lot of times. People have got to think, is it really real? So we need to change the narrative about things not being good enough when it comes from Africa, but also instilling that confidence in Africans to say, you actually can do it. What you are doing is good enough. It's not going to be shoved. But also for the world to start accepting, recognizing, and ensuring that all of those ideas that are coming out from Africa are good, can be developed for the benefit of Africa, not to be taken away from Africa and be brought back for African to then come and see them as not their own. So I think it's the collaborative efforts that is required here is for us as Africans to start doing things for ourselves and having confidence in what we can do and how well we can do it, but also for the world outside of Africa to start accepting, what's coming out of Africa as good enough to be consumed by them, and also as competitive enough to be at the same level as what comes outside of Africa.
Yes, thank you very much, Brenda, for those remarks. And Francois Joanneau writes that he trusts African potential. He also writes on the subject of internet access, very high-speed internet can run along the shores. And yes, I think improving internet connectivity in Africa is one of the foremost advances that could very quickly improve the productivity, the connectedness of many Africans, as well as the kind of perception that you discussed. Mike Lazine says, good point, and the main fiber optic cables from the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean can be tied to the fiber optic lines on the African coast. So perhaps there's not as much of the, let's say, basic building or laying of these cables that would need to be done, since the major connections are already there. Just some of the coastal cables would need to be laid. So those are interesting remarks. And Frederick writes, we need to internalize the transhumanism penetration in Africa. To effectively make transhumanism penetrate deeply into Africa, we must marry transhumanism with empathism first and foremost. And that's an interesting term there, empathism. And I think that speaks to what Brenda was talking about in terms of understanding the needs in particular communities and how transhumanist ideas can help people resolve those problems that they consider to be foremost. So all very interesting and important thoughts. So we have about 7 minutes left in our virtual enlightenment salon. There is an interesting question that I would like to get our guests' opinions on, and then we could hear some closing comments. And this comes from Osfranter Rufus, who wonders, is China doing a net positive or negative in developing massive construction projects in Africa? And this has been a subject touched upon in our YouTube chat. Some people are more optimistic. Some people are more skeptical about Chinese involvement. What about what you observe in your countries? Is there extensive Chinese involvement in terms of construction projects or economic partnerships? And what would you say the impact of that has been, if it has been significant? It looks like we have Josiah. Yes.
Well, so me in Nigeria, coming from the manufacturing sector, especially with my IoT experience, China involvement in Africa, especially Nigeria, has been a little bit of benefit to us, because most of our designs, our manufacturing processes, and everything are being done by Chinese due to the connection and the synergy we have with them. So basically, it's some positive side to us. That's all I can say.
Yes, thank you, Josiah. And Brenda, do you have any observations about the extent of, let's say, Chinese impact on South Africa or other African countries?
In the past, my view has been very low, but in the past few years, let me start from a political point of view. There's been a lot of interaction, a lot of I want to be careful with what I'm saying. The relationship is way better than it used to be from a political point of view. In terms of impact and on the ground change that we are seeing, there is a lot of that in terms of trade and all of that. But for me, I have not seen it where I think it can be more helpful. Africa is mostly rural. The impact that we are seeing from China or any other country that has got those relationships with African countries, South Africa specifically, that change we are seeing more in the cities. And it looks like from a layman, it benefits the people that already have, opportunities, the people that are already there. It's yet to affect or impact the people that are on the ground, the people that need that change more. I am hoping that with what we've seen, especially during COVID and from 2020 up to now, which has been a significant change from a health point of view, from an infrastructure point of view, and trade point of view, that will start to trickle down to the rural areas and start to benefit the poor that it needs to benefit. I'm always a bit careful or skeptical about relationships that are deemed to benefit Africans, but the benefits just ends at the top layers, don't really benefit the majority of the community. So yes, we have seen the change. Yes, there's a lot of trade that we are seeing because we are in the city and we can see it at high level. But if you ask the question to a person in the village or in the outskirts of the city, the answer that you are most likely to get is no.
Yes, thank you very much, Brenda. So it seems there is a differential impact between urban and rural areas, and as is often the case, the urban areas, the more developed areas, are getting more of the benefit. But as the previous conversation has emphasized, we want to see the benefits spread to the rural areas. There's a lot of untapped potential there as well. What's interesting, though, is South Africa has been one of the countries where the Sinovac COVID vaccine from China was actually authorized. So this was a way in which China has interacted with South Africa, which has not been so much the case in the United States or in Europe. Certainly, we don't have Sinovac available in the United States, though, of course, from the Transhumanist Party standpoint, we want all vaccines available everywhere so that people could make a choice among as many alternatives as possible. But there have been some ties, there have been some connections. So we have about a minute left in our virtual enlightenment salon today, and I would like to thank all of our guests, Brenda, Josiah, Frederick, and Didier, for helping us moderate this panel. I think it was an exceptional discussion about the promise of transhumanism in Africa, as well as the challenges that transhumanism faces. And they are, to some extent, different challenges than exist in the Western world, but there are some commonalities. For instance, the unawareness problem is one that we face. There is some opposition from religious fundamentalists as well, and that seems to be a problem that manifests in some flavors throughout the world. But also, I think this discussion underscored the importance of building local transhumanist hubs so that in many African countries, we could have leaders who are driving the transhumanist movement forward. And we are fortunate to have such leaders among us today. And those include Brenda and Josiah and Frederick and Josue, who was there previously. Haman, who unfortunately had some connectivity issues, but let's improve internet access in Africa so that he could join us in the future. And thank you, of course, to Daniel and Ben and Art Ramon for joining us. Thank you, as always, to our very involved and curious audience. Let us all live long and prosper.